I wanted to respond to something I said in the first video, and I got a question about. It was a very curious comment that 100,000 is not 1/10 of the way to 1 million. 100,000 is actually about 1/3 of the way to 1 million. And someone came back and asked, well, what do you mean? And it's a very different way of thinking about money, but it's the way the wealthy think about money. And I've had to train myself to think about money in this way. So let me explain it this way. Most of us are middle class or we're working class. We work a 9 to 5 job. Our employers pay us a certain amount every 2 weeks or every 2 months. And we think of our time and our value in terms of what we earn per hour or what we earn per week or 2 weeks or whatever we earn per month. Wealthy people, on the other hand, think of money in terms of how they can make money work for them, how they can make money. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's something pretty phenomenal. But what I said was accurate, and I stand by that. 100,000 is actually 1/3 of the way to 1 million versus being 1/10 of the way to 1 million. I wanted to specifically share this graph with you because this kind of elucidates what's going on here. So we have an individual, a fictional individual, who is going to invest $10,000 a year with an average 7% rate of return. How long does it take this person to get from 0 to 1 million if they're investing $10,000 a year? So if we look at this first chunk, which is the longest chunk to get from 0 to 100,000, it takes about 7.84 years. And the rest of the time, basically the answer is to get to 0 to 1 million. It takes just over 30 years to get to $1 million if you're saving $10,000 a year in an investment account and earning 7% return on that. It sounds like a really long time. And for a lot of people, it is a really long time. I think one of the biggest detriments of especially American society is we conceptualize youth and wealth together. We conceptualize that there are billionaires walking around who are 20 to 25 years old. And if you go on social media, that reinforces it, especially to a lot of young people who don't know the difference between reality and social media. They think that if you're not a millionaire by time you are 30, you are done. And that is just not true. The average millionaire in America is in their late 50s, early 60s. And the reason it is that way is because you need decades of compounding for most people to make it to the 1 million mark, the threshold of being a millionaire. I will also say this about being a millionaire in the United States. We often include home equity in the calculation of whether someone is a millionaire. And a lot of people in America are millionaires simply because of home equity, especially true here in California. Maybe they bought a home 30, 40 years ago. They bought it for 100,000, 180,000, and now that home is worth 1.8 million or something crazy like that. The person is technically a millionaire because their home has gone up so much in value, but that person may only have $3,000 sitting in a bank account. If you look at cash money millionaires, people who have $1 million in a brokerage account or even in their retirement account, those are far fewer in between in American society. And that's what you would expect. People who have cash money millionaires, it's probably 1 out of 50 Americans. Whereas if you take into account home equity and other forms of equity, real estate, et cetera, it's more like 1 out of 12 Americans are millionaires. So you have to be very careful when you're thinking about in terms of who has $1 million, how you're conceptualizing it. Are you conceptualizing it in terms of real estate and home values? Are you just looking at straight cash money millionaires? And personally, I look at just straight cash money millionaires because homes are often locked up in value. You can't get that value out unless you take a home equity line of credit or you sell the home. It's just not a really viable way, in my opinion, of measuring whether someone is a millionaire. But if you can be a cash money millionaire, you are in a rare circle indeed, because maybe 1 out of 50 Americans actually meet this criteria. And it's because it takes so long for someone putting away $10,000 a year, which is not a small amount of money, 7% rate of return. You're going at this for 30 years. I also want to go back to the point I made in the last video that if you can shortcut this part of it and plunk down $100,000 either from the sale of a home, sale of a business, maybe an inheritance or some other change, you really can shortcut this experience of moving to a millionaire. So let's say something comes your way, you sell a small business and you get 100,000 and you decide that you're going to invest that money. You plunk it down. You've just shaved 8 years off this whole process. A 30-year process has now become maybe a 22-year process. So these first few years, the from 0 to 100,000 is where most Americans fall apart. Most people don't even make it to 100,000. But really, you can look at here, and I keep saying 650,000 is the magic amount. If I can get you to 650,000, I know you're going to be a millionaire. This is where compounding starts happening really, really quickly. And once you hit about 650,000, it's maybe a 4 to 5 year sprint to 1 million. Yeah, 4 to 5 year sprint. So it's pretty phenomenal to see it written out like this. But I want to get back to my original point that 100,000 is 1/3 of the way to 1 million versus being 1/10 of the way of 1 million. So if we look at this graph, this covers 30 years. Okay. And if we're putting in $10,000 a year, in total, this person would contribute about $307,000 over the 30-year period of their own money towards the goal of being a millionaire. Compounding interest would contribute $692,000 of the 1 million total. So you see, this person has done a lot of hard work and heavy lifting towards the beginning, but in total, they put aside just over $300,000. The rest of the hard work and heavy lifting came from compounding. And this is how the rich think of money, how to get money to make money for them versus how work a 9 to 5. Most middle class, working class people think they're going to work a 9 to 5 and achieve this. You can work a 9 to 5 and achieve this $10,000 a year at 7% rate of return has to come from somewhere. And from the vast majority of people, it comes from working a 9 to 5. But the hard work and heavy lifting here hasn't been done by your 9 to 5. You didn't have to plunk down $1 million from your 9 to 5 to get to 1 million net worth. All you had to contribute is about 307,000, and the compounding interest did the rest of the work from 307,000 to 1 million. So that's what I'm saying. I hope that makes sense. 307,000 about is 1/3 of 1 million versus the other work that's being done by the compounding interest. This is a different way of conceptualizing money. Most of the work here has not been done by you, doesn't need to be done by you. It needs to be done by compounding interest. But what you do have to commit to is making that $10,000 a year contribution from your own personal funds in order for this rocket ship to take off. And you have to commit to a 30-year horizon with this. This is why most millionaires are in their late 50s, early 60s. If you cannot commit to the $10,000 a year, if you can't get the 7% rate of return, if you can't commit to the 30-year horizon, then this equation changes and you can't hit this number. How do you shortcut this? You shortcut it with money. Basically, like I said, in the first few years, if you can put down $100,000 cash, you can shave about 8 years off of this and move a 30-year time horizon to a 22-year time horizon. You can also shortcut this with a better rate of return. A 7% rate of return is it's achievable for most people, but very conservative. If you want to take more risk, there is potential for more loss, but there is also more potential for greater returns. If you had a 13% rate of return here, this would significantly shorten the timeline. This is putting in $10,000 a year. If you can put in more, if you can put in $20,000 or $30,000 a year, you can get to the $1 million threshold faster. There are ways to accelerate this process that may be accessible to some Americans, but not all Americans, but can put you at the threshold of 1 million much faster. This chart ends at 1 million, but if I show you the chart between 1 million and 2 million, it would absolutely blow your mind. It does not take 30 years to get from 1 million to 2 million. Some people can get there as quick as 5 years with certain returns and certain investment. Once you hit the 1 million threshold, it's much more likely you can easily get to 5 million to 10 million with minimal investing and letting compound interest take over. With proper investments, good returns, good streaks in the market, you can get to 2 million, 5 million, 10 million even in no time. Do most people get there? No. Why do most people not get there? Because most people can't do this first part of the graph from 0 to 1 million, and most people cannot do this step between 0 and 100,000. So I hope that this makes sense. This is just adding more information from part one of this video, but do whatever you can to get to 100,000 as quick as you can. You can do this over time. You can do this with as little as $10,000 a year over a 30-year period of time. But if you can find a way to shortcut this whole process and finish this first part of the graph, the second part of the graph will completely blow your mind between 1 million and 2 million. It moves really, really fast. So there you have it. If you have questions, if you have comments, please leave them in the comment section, and please like, share, and subscribe as well. Thank you.